All right, how's everyone doing? I'm Rich CELENZA. Thanks for tuning into the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? So what I'm going to get into today, or what I'm going to call this podcast, is Learn to Unlearn, which I know sometimes my titles sound a little crazy. But a lot of things I think that I talk about is about evolving and changing and experimenting and trying different things. That could go for working out. That could just go for actually living your life. Because if you're not, continuously experimenting or trying different things, you're never going to realize all the things you're missing out on. You're also not going to realize, I think, a lot of times your true potential. I've been doing videos on YouTube lately, a lot regarding fitness. And one of the things I previously talked about was one is trying something new every time you work out. Also, learning, what was the other one I did? Learning to build momentum when working out. And it's not just about the one workout, it's about the next one and the next one and the next one, right? And I described Walter Payton. I don't know if you know who Walter Payton is. He was an exceptional football player for the Chicago Bears. He was one of my favorite players ever. And, he would run through the field. First, you couldn't catch him. Obviously his maneuvering skills were unbelievable. He can also jump over jump over he just could jump unbelievably over people into the end zone. Not only that, he could run into you. And he was also so powerful. It was kind of very similar to, I guess Earl Campbell had that as well, where two or three guys would grab him, but he had so much momentum, he would just literally carry them on his back. So I kind of look at life that way a lot of times, where we just have to build momentum. And I may be doing a podcast on that, actually, getting into that. But in this podcast, what I'm going to be talking about, it kind of relates to that to a certain degree. And it's not just about momentum, but it's about learning to unlearn. And what I mean by that is I think a lot of us have learned a lot of things, and we've built momentum. And we think a lot of times what we've done or what we've learned has kind of moved us into a certain direction, which is great. But I think a lot of us as well have had momentum, and it's kind of went into a direction that's not too good, or it's kind of become stagnant. We haven't gotten to where we want to be, right? So I think a lot of us, and I talk about self-awareness, don't realize that a lot of our beliefs, and I'm not here talking political or religious beliefs, the beliefs that we live, or the lifestyle we live and what we believe is right, or what we've learned is right, is actually a lot of times wrong for us. And we don't want to admit that. We've been taught by a lot of people, or have been programmed by a lot of people, that for one, we're a lot older, they don't really relate to the times, or they just weren't as knowledgeable as they should have been, or they just weren't that as knowledgeable, or they weren't knowledgeable for us, I guess you could say, a lot of times. And that can go for grandparents, parents, siblings, or whoever you are around. A lot of us, I think, were around a lot of people that loved us, that wanted the best for us. But the truth is, they probably weren't that much more knowledgeable than anyone else to a certain degree. And if you want to learn certain things, you've learned them, but they may have been wrong. And I think they're wrong as much as they're right. I talk about that a lot of times on the podcast, where I think we're wrong more than we're right from throughout most of our life. I really do. Because if we were right a lot more than wrong, I think we'd be a lot happier. I think we'd also be a lot more wealthier. If you're looking for wealth or whatever you're looking to do, you would, I think, excel a lot further. And I've done podcasts even going through school, to bring that into play. So if you go to school, if you go to grade school, middle school, high school, say even go to college, you should be exceptional. You should be unbelievable. Even after high school, if you studied one thing and mastered it, you should be great at it. Really, and a lot of people aren't. They're kind of educated. They have some knowledge. But a lot of times I see kids in high school nowadays more than ever, not to pick on millennials, they don't even know how to change a tire. They don't even know how to cut, grass, some of these kids, depending on what environment they were in. They don't know how to do a lot of things, wash a car, for instance, correctly. And with technology, yeah, they're great on a computer or doing certain things like that. But as far as other things, they're just very naive. And I think, too, is no one taught them, which whatever. And also they didn't want to learn. And what they think they know or they've learned they really don't know because they've never experimented with it or they've never gone through it. So that's that's something I look at a lot of times, especially with younger people. But back to like a lot of things, and I think you might agree with me here, a lot of things that we do at work, and I catch myself doing this, we've learned certain things, right? And then you're doing them, and you think you're doing them well. And then either somebody else shows you something or you discover something else, and you're like, how did I not know this before? Like it turns everything around. Like you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize you could do this. How much simpler this is, or how much faster I could get something done if I do it this way. And I think in life, that's what we need to kind of start figuring out as well, because there's all these things around us, and we kind of just have become a victim of just kind of this pattern of doing the same thing over and over again. And I'm not getting into the insanity thing where we keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting, certain results. And we keep getting the same results, but it's really just figuring out what I'm doing every day throughout my life, what I've learned. How much do I not know? How much can I learn to really, or how much more can I learn to truly get me to where I want to be? I also think we've become very lazy, because it would just be like anything else where we only want to learn as much as we're going to get away with. I hope I'm saying that correctly. So like even at the workplace, you kind of want to I'm just using work, for example. It could be school. It could be whatever. But you kind of just want to learn, like, how do I do this? I don't care anything else about it. I just want to get it over with when I do it, right? And I get that, because I think there's so many things out there now more than ever that it's almost overwhelming, a lot of things regarding learning things. It could be even if you have a new car. Most people don't even know how to use half the stuff in their car. They don't even know a lot of things that the car even has to offer. That could go for many things in their life. There's, like your phone, you most likely, like a lot of people, just, you could call people, you text people, you use apps and blah, blah, blah. You still probably don't know all the different types of things your phone has to offer. And as you know, a lot of times, the longer you have your phone, you're like, wow, I never knew I could do this. I never knew there was an app I could do that. And that makes sense, right? You're always going to be learning in things. But again, back to life, your life is kind of like that. But a lot of us don't live that life. A lot of us just keep doing the same shit over and over again. And then we kind of find ourselves kind of hitting the wall, or find ourselves hitting the wall. We find ourselves bored out of our minds. We find ourselves aggravated because we're not moving forward. A lot of us don't make more money, even though we're trying to. A lot of us keep falling in more debt. A lot of these things, and again, if you look at your behavior, like, where did you learn to do what you're doing? Who taught you these things? And a lot of times I talk about this. We know a lot of times when we're making a good decision or a bad, but even when we kind of know we're making a bad decision, we will still go forward and do that. And I see that happening, especially with people getting in, buying a home that's too big that they may or may not be able to afford in the future, getting in credit card debt, spending more money than they have, trying to impress people. When you're out doing certain things, or just in general, you're not making the right decision, but you continuously keep doing that. And that's a perfect example, like, to learn to unlearn, because you've learned to do that. Now it's time to unlearn that. And when I mean unlearn it too, is not do it anymore. Stop kind of doing things that are hurting you and try to figure out what's going to actually help you. Because a lot of things, again, I see a lot of people doing things throughout their life, and it could be throughout a week, a month, a year, and I do it as well. But I've kind of, at the point where I'm self-aware, that I'm like, if I do this, I'm going to get pissed off because it may not pan out the way I wanted, right? And sometimes you got to risk things. I'm not saying not to take risks either. And I'm not saying to change up your entire life just so we can make ourselves clear, right? What I am saying, though, is I've got to be open-minded enough to say, you know what? You've done this before, and it usually doesn't work out that way. Or you keep doing this year after year, and you kind of keep ending up in the same position, which that's fine if I want to be in that position. But if I don't want to be in that position, why do I keep doing that? Even your relationships, I think a lot of people, they don't realize they have fallen into, I don't want to say a trap, but I think a lot of guys, I can speak for because I'm a guy, they kind of put themselves in a position where if they're either in a relationship or they're engaged or they're married, they have all these different types of things that they're supposed to do. And here's the deal. There's no relationship that's the same out there. Nothing is the same as anyone else's. You really got to try to learn and figure out what's going to work best for you. I talk about that in my Mastering Self-Confidence program all the time, that most guys are not self-aware of their behavior in their relationships, even if they have kids. And a lot of their behavior is probably, or they're behaving, or they've learned a lot of things that really weren't right. And they know they're not right. But they kind of repeat what their parents may have done for them, good and bad. It's kind of like, passing the baton. Your parents or your grandparents handed it to your parents, and your parents handed it to you. Now, I'm not saying we all live different lives than our parents or grandparents, because the times are different, right? But a lot of things, if you look back, that, I say that used to piss me off about, say, my parents or grandparents, or just in life in general, I found myself doing the same thing. So it's quite interesting to me that, I learned how to do that from them, I think. And I didn't like certain things that they did. And I'm sure as a child, they didn't like a lot of my behavior. And I don't blame them at all. And then my kids, I may act a certain way. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is something that I know that didn't work with me. It could be forcing them to believe certain things, political or religious, or just trying to program a certain way, or, and I get a lot of parents, for the most part, want the best for their kids. But we also have to realize, just as, as people, that a lot of things, again, we learned we're handing down. And I think to a certain point we have to, and I'm, again, not saying not to devalue what your parents or grandparents or whatever your family has taught you. That's wonderful. That's always there. But there's also things you can learn to better yourself and better others. I go through that with my mother a lot, because she even listens to my podcast. And we sometimes argue over certain things. And then at the end, I really do believe that we come to a mutual understanding. She sees my point of view, and I still see hers. And I think that's a great place to be. Sometimes, for instance, if I'm talking with my father, he's very set in his ways. Not that that's bad, but you cannot sway him either way. It's his way for the most part, or the highway. And again, I'm not saying that's bad either. That works for him, and that has worked throughout his life. But what I've really learned, not only as a parent, but just as a human being, is there are a lot of times there's just a lot of better ways to go about things than the way I'm going about them. And I have to take an honest approach. And the honest approach is, I'm not as intelligent as I should be in a lot of things, because I kind of blown it off. I become very self-centered. That's my issue. That if I want to learn something, or if I'm interested in something, I'm all in. But if I'm not, I'm kind of all out, which is really not a great way. It can help, and it can also destroy. Especially when you kind of talk finances a lot of times, because I get caught up creating projects that take years, and I lose myself in them. And I had to realize this, or learn this, is that a lot of other people I'm taking with me along the ride, and a lot of times that ride is not that fun, It's almost like going to an amusement park. You got really fun rides, real boring rides, dangerous rides, shitty rides. And I kind of sometimes look at my life and say, what am I doing? What am I putting other people through? I realized that really after my divorce, because I was so obsessed with making films. And I really forgot about everything else along the way. And nobody taught me to behave like that. I just behaved that way. I became very self-centered and arrogant. And I thought I kind of used the excuse saying, hey, I'm doing this for everyone else. The reality was I was doing it for myself, right? And I had to learn definitely how to kind of unlearn my personality traits. And they're still not perfect by any means. But I do think after my divorce is I learned how to respect other people's opinions, how to manage my time differently, and how to just listen. And it's really not all about me. And so, yeah, that's really what I want to get into this podcast, is really just trying to make people aware that you have a lot of opportunities to learn more now than ever, especially with our phones, through videos, audio like this. Not that I'm some genius by any means. Reading. We have so much more information But what I really find interesting with people is a lot of times they're not that interested in learning more. They're actually more interested in kind of learning more about what other people are doing on social media, kind of wasting their time doing that. But if you'd like to do that, God bless. But they're almost, they waste a lot of time, is what I should say, when all those, there's so much information out there regarding how to do things right. But I think a lot of people, when they get into it and they see all these other things going on, it almost diminishes them, or they feel like, wow, I'm stupid. I've been doing this wrong. So it's almost like they don't want to learn more. It kind of reminds me of like a GPS, for instance, where you may have known how to get around, right? Or you thought you knew shortcuts and this and that, and then all of a sudden you put in a GPS how to get somewhere even locally, and you're like, oh my God, this is half the time. That's kind of what I think what our lives could be like if we just, start following or start learning a lot more about the things we're interested in, taking that time, even if it's an hour a day or whatever time frame you want to make it. But it's all there. Now, a lot of people may not have, they can't grasp on certain things like other people. We all know there are a lot of people out there that are just far more intelligent than others, right? But I do believe a lot of times is everybody's intelligent to a certain degree, especially with things that they're interested in, or they'll learn about those things. So you can't judge yourself a lot of times to what other people are doing or how they, some people they know how to make tons of money, right? Some people know how to get in great shape. Some people know how to be great parents. Some people know how to, learn about technology. Some people know how to speak many different languages. Some people do extraordinary things and that are just average Joes. If you go back through history, it's amazing how not always the smartest people in the world created amazing things. They were just simple things that, and that's something I think that we have to look at as human beings is we have the potential to learn and unlearn, but it's really all on us. And don't be afraid to learn or evolve and change. I think that's the one thing that paralyzes us as a race sometimes. Because again, you don't want to, kind of figure out that you figured it out wrong. I think people want to think that they figured out what's right all the time. And it may be right, but I can assure you a lot of time it may not even be wrong, but there's a better way to do things sometimes. Now, I'm not always here to say, you got to, change horses in the middle of the stream constantly or constantly make yourself crazy analyzing everything. But I do think people need to understand that there are so many things out there that you don't know about that can help you. And you can learn this, relatively quickly. And I don't mean quickly like in days. It may take some time. But if you just took the time to really sit back and analyze and self-analyze yourself and say, wow, what am I really looking to do? What am I looking to accomplish? And learn about that and really follow the ones that have succeeded, really. Because there's a saying in our family, my grandfather owned like one of the largest tailor shops in all of Chicago. But he said he had a theory, and I'm going to screw it up, but I'm just going to say it. But he said he can show you something in X amount of time, like in a day, that took somebody 10 years to master in the clothing garment industry. Or he could teach you things that like in 30 years, like he could take all these things he's learned in so many, decades and sit down with people and show them something that, that that could just learn very quickly. That took him 30 years to figure out. And if you look at life, it's kind of like that a lot of times, right? So anyways, I find that quite interesting when my father talks about that or my other family members on how sometimes you can, you could say one thing to somebody and you're like, oh my God, I did not know that. Or you can show somebody something very simple and you're like, it took me 20 years to learn that. Or all these type of things. So just really keep an open mind is what I'm saying, and try to learn and always be learning. And it's the best tool I think we've ever been given as a human race, is that we can constantly evolve. And I've been testing myself trying to learn Italian the last few years, because I've always heard that you can't learn another language, or it's very, very, very hard to learn another language as you get older. And I've always been a horrible student, and I I don't have the skill to memorize, let's say. My memorization skills are very weak. But I've been doing it more and more and more, and I never gave up. And I'm like, I just want to see if I can do this. And slowly but surely, I am doing that. And I've watched all these different YouTube videos on what they've done to master languages. A lot of those things I couldn't do. But it was quite interesting after testing myself, and I'm still testing myself every day, learning new things. And it really started with the language to say, wow, if I can learn a new language, I'm sure I can learn a lot of other things that are going to help benefit me. So I'll wrap it up there. If you get a chance, you could check out my website, richcelenza.com. There's tons of other stuff on there. There's tons of stuff on there. I'm also on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you want, you might want to check out my YouTube channel. I've been putting up a lot of stuff fitness related. Also, I've been visiting a lot of places again all over North America. I was just in Salt Lake City, Utah. I went to one of my favorite little cafes over there, Torino. Or is that? That's in Farmington. That's a great place. I was in Eugene. I shot a whole video. The University of Oregon. I got to take a tour through their fitness center. I've been to some new restaurants, and I've been putting up a lot of gym videos. I do tours on gyms, and then I also give advice a lot of times before, in the middle, or after workouts regarding fitness. So if you like fitness stuff, and it's not just videos showing me working out, it's just really informative type things like I mentioned earlier in the podcast. So I'll wrap it up there. If you get a chance, leave a comment. And if you're traveling, safe travels.